The African sun was just beginning its ascent. It painted the vast savannah in hues of orange and gold. Paul Nyarno knew this land well. It was his home. Every morning he walked a familiar trail. This path wound through tall grasses and acacia trees. The air was fresh. It carried the scent of damp earth and distant wildflowers. Paul enjoyed these quiet moments. They allowed him to connect with the natural world around him. He felt a sense of peace here, a rhythm that matched his own heartbeat. This particular morning, the 1st of June in 2025, felt no different. The birds sang their usual chorus. Small creatures rustled in the undergrowth, going about their daily business. Paul walked with a steady, unhurried pace. He observed the dewdrops clinging to spider webs. They sparkled like tiny diamonds in the early light. He noticed the tracks of a duiker that had passed by earlier. As Paul rounded a familiar bend, a subtle change occurred. The usual chorus of insects seemed to quieten. A faint, almost imperceptible rustling sound came from the tall grass to his right. It was a sound that did not quite fit the morning's pattern. Paul paused for a moment. He listened intently. His senses, honed by years in the bush, told him something was amiss. The air grew still. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. This sudden silence was more unnerving than any loud noise. It was a silence that often preceded a storm. He scanned the dense vegetation. The grass stood tall and thick, a perfect hiding place. He could see nothing out of the ordinary. Perhaps it was just a small mongoose or a ground bird. He tried to reassure himself, yet a prickle of unease ran down his spine. He had learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts were now screaming a silent warning. He tightened his grip on his staff. Suddenly the grass erupted. Not one, but 3 enormous snakes launched out. They moved with terrifying speed. Their scales, a mottled pattern of greens and browns, glinted in the sunlight. These were African rock pythons, giants of their kind. Their massive bodies, thick as a man's thigh, uncoiled like deadly springs. Paul gasped, stumbling backward. There was no time to run, no time to think. The attack was too swift, too coordinated. It was an ambush, perfectly executed. The lead snake, its eyes like polished obsidian, struck first, aiming for his legs. Paul instinctively swung his staff. He managed to deflect the first python's head, but the other 2 were already upon him. One wrapped itself around his legs with crushing force. He felt his bones creak under the immense pressure. The other began to coil around his torso. Its cold, muscular body tightened, squeezing the air from his lungs. He cried out, a sound swallowed by the vastness of the savannah. Paul's breath came in ragged gasps. The immense pressure on his chest made each inhalation a painful effort. His arms were pinned. He could not reach for any weapon, not even the staff he had dropped. He looked into the unblinking eyes of the python coiling around his upper body. There was no malice there, only cold, predatory instinct. It was a chilling reminder of nature's indifference to the suffering of an individual. He was merely prey, a source of sustenance. The realization brought a fresh wave of terror. He thought of his family, his village. Would they find him? Would they even know what happened? The thought of dying here alone, crushed by these silent giants, filled him with an unbearable sadness. He had faced dangers before, charging buffalo, prowling leopards, but this was different. Just as Paul felt his consciousness slipping away, a sound ripped through the air. It was a sound unlike any other, a deep guttural roar. It echoed across the savannah, powerful and commanding. It was a sound that spoke of authority, of raw, untamed power. The snakes, for the first time, paused in their relentless constriction. Their heads lifted, their bodies tensing. They too recognized that sound. It was the roar of a lion, a male lion, by the depth and volume of the call. A shiver, not entirely of fear this time, ran through Paul, even in his weakened state. The roar came again, closer this time, more insistent. It was filled with a primal fury that seemed to shake the very ground. Paul, his vision blurry, could barely turn his head, but he sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The snakes, which had been so focused on him, now seemed agitated. Their coils loosened ever so slightly. It was a minuscule change, but for Paul, fighting for every breath, it was a sliver of hope. The sound was a challenge, a declaration of presence from the undisputed king of this domain. The air crackled with a new kind of tension. Through the tall grass, a magnificent creature emerged. It was a large male lion in the prime of his life. His mane, a glorious halo of black and gold, framed a face of regal intensity. His amber eyes, sharp and focused, surveyed the scene with an unnerving calmness. He moved with a fluid grace, his powerful muscles rippling beneath his tawny coat. He was the epitome of wild majesty, a symbol of Africa's untamed spirit. He paused a short distance away, his gaze fixed on the entangled mass of Paul and the pythons. There was no fear in his demeanor, only a focused determination. The lion let out another low growl, a rumbling warning that vibrated through the ground. He took a few deliberate steps closer. His tail twitched, a sign of agitation, but his movements remained controlled and purposeful. He was assessing the situation, his incredible senses taking in every detail. He saw the man helpless and struggling. He saw the three giant snakes, their coils tight. It was a scene of life and death, a drama unfolding on his savannah. Paul, barely conscious, could only make out the lion's imposing silhouette against the bright sky. It was a terrifying and yet, strangely, a hopeful sight. To be saved from one predator, only to face another, was a cruel irony. But there was something in the lion's stance, in his focused gaze, that suggested his attention was not on Paul. It was entirely on the snakes. With a sudden explosive burst of speed, the lion charged. He did not roar this time. He moved with a silent, deadly precision. He targeted the largest python, the one coiled around Paul's torso. His massive paws, armed with razor-sharp claws, struck the snake's body. The python recoiled, its grip on Paul loosening. The lion bit down hard, crushing bone and flesh. The struggle was brutal, a flurry of hisses and growls. The other pythons turned to this new threat. One lunged at the lion's flank, but the lion was too quick. He sidestepped, spinning to face his assailants. He swatted one snake, sending it tumbling back. He then focused on the python around Paul's legs. Paul felt the pressure ease as the snakes defended themselves. It was a chaotic, desperate battle. The lion fought with courage and determination. He moved with power and grace. He was outnumbered, facing 3 deadly constrictors. Yet he fought on, undeterred. Slowly, agonizingly, the tide of the battle turned. The lion, with incredible strength, managed to disable 2 of the pythons. They lay writhing, badly injured. The 3rd snake launched a final venomous strike. It bit the lion deeply on its shoulder. The lion roared in pain, shaking the snake off. He stood panting over the defeated reptiles. Paul lay on the ground, gasping for air. He watched in disbelief as the lion limped slightly. A dark stain spread on its golden fur. The lion had won the battle. He had saved Paul's life. But it was clear the victory had come at a terrible cost. The noble creature had sustained a serious injury. The lion turned its amber eyes towards Paul. There was no aggression in its gaze, only weariness. It took a few unsteady steps, then lay down, its breathing shallow. It had expended all its energy in the fierce battle. The venom or infection was taking its toll. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the savannah, Paul slowly regained some strength. He crawled towards the fallen lion. The magnificent creature was still breathing, but its life was ebbing away. Paul reached out a trembling hand, wanting to offer comfort. He could only watch, his heart filled with gratitude and anguish. The lion's sacrifice gave him a second chance at life. He would never forget this act of interspecies heroism. Eventually, villagers found him. They were stunned by the scene. They helped Paul back to the village. The story of his rescue spread like wildfire. A wild lion sacrificing itself to save a human. It challenged their understanding of the natural world. Paul recovered from his physical injuries, but the emotional impact remained with him. He no longer walked the path with the same carefree spirit. He walked with a newfound respect for life. He often returned to the spot. He would sit quietly, remembering the lion's sacrifice. The lion's act changed Paul Nyarno forever.